Hey guys, it's Paul. So by popular request, I'm going to talk a little bit about the semi-limited list in Yu-Gi-Oh right now and where I think it could go and how I feel that currently it's a bit underutilized by Konami in the TCG at least. So, I made a video a while back about limiting cards to one and why that can be sort of a double-edged sword. Sometimes cards going to one is fine for balancing a deck, but other times it can make certain cards, especially like staple cards, seem a little bit sacky or like luck-based and unreliable. There's plenty of takes that you can have on that, so I'm not, here to say like you have to think about it one way or another. It's not what I'm ever really here to do. But people asked me to talk a little bit about the semi-limited list because I did suggest briefly that I feel it's something that has a very different dynamic and one that I think isn't fully explored. So the semi-limited list it's got a bit of a Yu-Gi-Oh history. I mean, cards can go to 0, they can go to 1, they can go to 2, they can get unlimited. I know it sounds elementary. I'm just establishing the ground rules here so people know. The semi-limited list where a card is at 2, sometimes it's been a pretty big list and it's served like different purposes through the years. Like sometimes it was used to sort of balance decks and like cards and stuff. I feel like more recently it kind of exists as the limbo between a card coming, off the ban list. So a card will sometimes go from banned to limited. Konami will see that it doesn't do anything for a format or two. They'll put it to semi-limited. If it still doesn't do anything, then they'll just unlimited and it goes to 3. And that's fine. There are also cards that are really, really infamous for being part of the semi-limited list. The biggest culprit here is Destiny Hero Malicious. It's one of those cards that just doesn't seem to have any better place than being at 2. A similar card that's actually been on the semi-limited list for a while was like Reborn Tengu. This was shortly after the Plant Synchro format. It was just a card that gave you a lot of free synchro material and allowed for some extended combos. Obviously, it's not nearly as potent today, but it was for a while. And so right now, the only card I believe on the semi-limited list is Destiny Hero Malicious. But if you take a look at the OCG, you'll actually notice that their semi-limited list is huge. There's so many cards on their semi-limited list. Some are like, I have no clue why this is on here. Some it's like, okay, that's interesting. Some make perfect sense. I think that the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG could afford to explore the semi-limited list more. I don't want to suggest that it's like the best solution for solving problems in a format, but I do think that it adds something that the limited list does not have. And that is, you get more fine, minute control over things like deck consistency or engine longevity. What the hell is Paul talking about? Okay, better, let's go with an example. So an engine right now that is pretty splashable, and some people maybe like it, some don't, is the Eldritch engine. So in the OCG, the Eldritch engine has been hit in a number of ways. Something that I've heard people also say about the engine is that they wish maybe Scarlet Sanguine or Cursed Eldland could get limited or something. And the counter argument to that is, well, okay, Eldritch isn't like winning every event, it's just a splashful engine in a lot of decks. It makes them more viable, so good, it's fairly balanced. I haven't explored this enough to really like have a strong stance on those specific cards, but in a more general sense, I think it would be interesting to see something like, okay, let's put Scarlet Sanguine or Cursed Eldland to 2 instead of to 1. Obviously, these cards don't need to be banned. I think we can all agree on that. But what if they were at 2? If they're at 1, I feel like you start to really cut hard into the deck's consistency or that engine's consistency to a point where people just probably wouldn't use it anymore. But I think that at 2, it's different. Because at 2, Cursed Eldland, the search card, is still quite reliable. You can expect to see it. Same goes for something like Scarlet Sanguine, which, kind of summons your Eldritch and gets things moving a little bit faster. I don't think these cards are broken, but I think that maybe at 2, they show up a little bit less. And that's kind of where the statistics and numbers thing gets into the picture. So if you think about how it would look in a single game, your opponent might still see Cursed Eldland, they might still open with Sanguine, and you might still lose and be upset, and like their engine goes off and it's all fine. But over the course of like, let's say a regional or YCS where there's like maybe 9 or 10 rounds in a day, the eldlet strategy over time, over many repeated tests, if a card is at 2, it will show up less frequently. It will still show up, it's just less frequently. And that's what I mean when I say you kind of get more minute control over a format. And the same could be said for plenty of different cards. I'm not saying it's the best solution for said cards, but I'm just going to toss out some examples and just for talking points. So, for instance, right now, there are cards like Rocket Tracer, right? Rocket Tracer, one of the sort of cornerstones of the Dragon Link strategy, although these days there's so much to it, it's more than any one card. But like, let's say Rocket Tracer, if it's a card that you're running 3 of, if this card got semi-limited and it was at 2, it would still show up a lot, and there's still ways to access it, but it's like ever so slightly less reliable. Does this mean that the Dragon Link strategy is dead? Certainly not. Does it mean that it's unviable? Certainly not. It might still even be the best deck, but it might just be a little wee bit less consistent, a little bit less reliable. Not so much that it's like to a degree of like being luck stack related, just less reliable. Another example of a card like that might be something like Fossil Dig or Soulating Oviraptor, or maybe even cards like Fire Formation Tenki. These cards that, they're there for consistency, so by putting them to 2 instead of to 1, you can not make them feel useless, but rather slightly, they show up slightly less. So in the course of, one large tournament, and then, of course, multiple large tournaments, these decks are slightly weaker. I don't know if this is the best way to handle stuff. I don't want this to come across as me saying that it is. I have not balanced a game professionally for many, many years. I don't want to seem like I know what's best. I really don't, I promise. I'm just raising the idea because I think that it's a unique thing that only the semi-limited list can do. It's something where, you can put a card to 2 and it might not make a difference. There are certain cards that are only run at 2 copies, or they only even like teched at 1 copy. So putting it to 2 makes not really much of a difference. Like examples of this would be like maybe Crystron Halqifibrax. Specifically when that card was like at its worst. It's used right now. I don't think it's as bad right now, but like back when there were like huge combos involving Halqifibrax, putting it to 2 wouldn't change anything. Yeah, most people only ran 1 or maybe 2 for like, a second iteration of the combo in the same game, whatever. No one was running like 3 Halqifibrax, so putting it to 2 doesn't change anything. And there's like plenty of other cards that, that you can say the same thing for them. So in that way, I don't think that, it's the best solution for balancing everything. But I do think that there are certain cards that, if put to 2, could minutely balance, certain decks. I think it's probably better for archetypes than it is for like staple cards. I feel that with staple cards, by staple cards I mean stuff like Forbidden Droplets or, Called by the Grave, Lightning Storm, whatever, staples kind of come to mind for you. Those usually are a little bit trickier to put at like 2. They tend to be like 1, 3, 0 cards. But I think when it comes to archetypes that maybe seem a little bit overtuned, you can use the semi-limited list to slightly nerf them. And then adjust from there. I guess my main thing with this is I'm a big fan of like small conservative micro nerfs to stuff. And then seeing where things go from there. Like, that goes for Yu-Gi-Oh! Fighting games, MMOs, and stuff that I play. I'd rather not see huge sweeping changes, but rather small little things that slightly shift player mentality, slightly shift the odds of how often something's going to show up or how the counterplay to it works. And observe and see, what does this mean? What does it do? I'm not saying that this will always solve the problem, but like if it gives you a better indication of where you can go next with balancing a deck or a card or whatever, then I think that gives the semi-limited list a lot more application. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's why I talk on the semi-limited list. I think that the TCG underutilizes it. Some people want it gone. I totally understand. I mean, we could probably just get rid of it and maybe this game would be not much different than it is today, clearly. But, so I don't want to say that that's like a bad way to think about it either. I just think that it could be neat to, since it exists, use it. See what we can get out of it. What can Konami R&D glean from using the semi-limited list a bit more? As I said at the start, the OCG uses the semi-limited list quite liberally, and I think that that is pretty cool. I saw like that they have like Sky Striker Engage at 2, and like all these different cards at 2, Skull Crobat Joker, and different things that honestly a lot of TCG people kind of want these cards back, and sometimes they want certain decks to be playable again. So it'd be fun, it'd be neat. I still think that it definitely is a great place for cards like Malicious, and I still think it's like a great sort of limbo spot for bringing cards off the list. There's just one more application that it could have, and I think that would be really nice. Alright, I think that's everything I have to say about the semi-limited list. I may have left something out, but it feels good. So let me know what you guys think about the semi-limited list. How do you think it could be better utilized? Or do you think it's fine the way it is? Do you think that it should just be gone? What cards maybe belong on the semi-limited list in your opinion? Yeah, let me know down in the comments. I think this will be a really fun conversation for us to have. That's going to be it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Pass turn.